I'm Shannon Harrigan, and do you want to know anything else in the intro? I'm
Sure.
a professional counseling student
Okay.
at Texas State, and I am graduating in May. I grew up in Lubbock, second most conservative county in the entire country, I think, other than Provo, Utah.
Okay. Oh, you're like, this is
This is true.
established somewhere.
This is established and true. And as that goes along with that, it's a very, very segregated, mostly white town. So I was not exposed to other races. I wasn't exposed to people who are outside of my socioeconomic status much at all.
Okay.
So I was those years I was really largely surrounded by people who looked like me, who had the same things as I did, and all of that. So
You grew up in and were part of a white community.
very much so. There are people in this country who live with a certain amount of opportunity and privilege. And there are other people who don't have access to those things. And it's become so prevalent, it operates in a way that is it's been very normalized and has become almost entirely invisible. So that to me kind of is the picture of oppression. And it takes place in a lot of different contexts with different groups of people. So anti-oppression to me is the process of taking what's invisible and making it visible, and hoping through that first step to then kind of dismantle that structure that's been put in place and that is invisible. This is when some of the early memories kind of come up for me. And I mean, I certainly couldn't have articulated at the time, but certain experiences started highlighting differences for me. And one of them that has stuck with me for years, I was about 5, and we just moved to a new neighborhood. And I was out riding my little, I guess it was a tricycle then. And there was, about 3 houses down, there was an African American family who was like, the family came as a unit and would take care of this lawn. They were the lawn keepers. And they had a little son who was my age. And naturally we were drawn to each other, and we played one afternoon and had a great time, and then his family went away. And I didn't see him again for a couple weeks, but then he came back and he was there again. And I was very excited, and I brought my coloring books and came down to the yard, and we kind of sprawled out on the driveway and started coloring. And his mother came up and said, she told us to stop, and he didn't need to hang out with a little white girl. And it was shocking. I just did not get it. I didn't understand, but I knew that something was wrong. I knew something was bad, because she was not happy. And yeah, I never saw him again. I don't know if I ever even knew his name, but I think about him a lot. I wonder where he is now and what he's doing, because he had a very, very different life than I did. I really believe there was a separation there. Something was not acceptable. I certainly was not aware of oppression through that, but I was aware of something that seemed so pleasant and good to me being labeled wrong and not acceptable. And there was a separation, I think, that was started there. I think I have been really fortunate in that I've had people in my life who have led me down a path that's led me here. And one of them was a teacher, a social studies teacher, 5th grade, Regina Patilla. And I remember one day raising the issue of race and having a very long, intense conversation with our class about it. And I remember
in the 5th grade.
In the 5th grade,
Okay.
and I remember talking about that little boy in that class, and talking to her about it. And I think that instilled something in me, a sense of wanting it not to be that way. It was about that same time, 5th grade, when my grandmother moved from her home that she'd been living in for years and years to like an assisted living facility. It was very well-to-do, people with money. Everybody there was white, and every staff member, without exception, was African American, without exception. And
How old were you?
10.
10, okay.
Yeah. And I remember being shocked by that and not liking that. And being told by my parents that it's a different generation and it's just the way it is. And not really being happy with that answer. It seemed oversimplified. I didn't like that it seemed to make it okay for them. It was a way to kind of ignore it. It was a way to kind of ignore it. Yeah.
What was being ignored?
The fact that I think there was this social structure built into this building where a certain group that had historically been subservient to another group that was just being repeated in a very blatant fashion. And I honestly don't think anybody that was living there would have been okay with it being any other way. That's so sad to say, but I think that's true. I think it's what they expected. When I was 14, my grandmother took me shopping. We bought a dress that I loved. We were walking out of the mall, and an African-American girl, a little older than me, started walking towards us in that dress. My grandmother turned to me and said, "Do you want to take that dress back?" By that time I was angry. I was really upset.
What do you think she meant when she said that?
That was a dress for African Americans. That was not a dress for me. I shouldn't be wearing the same clothes. Yeah. She was concerned that I would be upset by that. And yeah, I was upset with her. I think at that point I kind of adopted my parents' explanation. My grandmother is of a different generation. She doesn't get it. I think I really did kind of adopt that. Because I loved my grandmother. I absolutely adored her. So it was, I don't know, it kind of allowed me to ignore those things as well. I don't want to see that in her.
In your grandmother?
Yeah.
You didn't want to see what?
Yeah, racism. That's it. Yeah, I didn't want it to be present. It hadn't been present in my family up to that point that I'd seen. So, yeah, there I was. So anytime I visited her, it was right in my face. After that point, yeah. I think it kind of put a fire in me, in general. With her, certainly, I had conversations with her sometimes.
Did you?
Yeah. Not a lot, and I certainly gave up on them, I think, pretty quickly. In the mall, I know I did, as we were leaving. But yeah, that might be when the spark kind of was ignited for me, I think. Where are you? It's a question, you know? It's kind of asking you, so where are you going to stand? Who are you? What are you going to do about it? Am I going to be okay with this? Am I going to am I going to let myself fall into these same patterns? or am I going to break away and be different? Well, in that moment, I think there is an awareness, or there was, and I'm just finding the words now, that this was just one example of many conversations that were probably taking place all over our country between grandmothers and granddaughters, between generations. So, yeah, I wanted my generation to be different. I was in Lubbock for a while longer, so it made it a little challenging. But yeah, I mean, my best friend in junior high was Hispanic. She was different from me. Her family, different culture, very different ways of being together, and I learned stuff from being with her family. I don't know if I can put it in words, but being with people who were different from me, and being with people who on the outside were very different from me, but seeing all of the very big ways that their family was exactly the same as mine. That's where kind of the education was, I guess. And I think being in theater, I got very involved in theater at that point. And I was exposed to gays, lesbians. That was, much more in that population. So that became kind of a norm for me, being in theater. I do have dear friends who I've watched suffer a great deal and continue to suffer. But they found a, what's the word I'm looking for? Safe place in theater. It was a gathering place for a lot of people who felt marginalized in all sorts of different ways. I don't wear t-shirts that say I'm anti-oppression, I'm anti-racist. I hope it would be in my actions and my words.
You hope it gets seen. You hope it gets seen by...
I hope it gets seen, yeah. And there was a time in New York when I worked for a nonprofit that was centered around social justice issues, and that was kind of my, I don't know, I felt drawn to actually, formally take employment that would say I am against these things. And that was my label that I wore for a while. And I worked as a teacher at a community college with, if any of my classes, it had one white person in it, then that was unique. I was definitely the minority. And that, I don't know, I had torn feelings about that because I loved it, but I also never wanted to be seen as like the white girl that was, what's the Freedom Riders, or what's the other one, the other film, Michelle Pfeiffer goes in and, what's it called? I don't know. No, there's a whole genre of films where the white people go in and, go into the school and the classroom and they save all these poor souls. I did not want to be seen as like the rescuer. And I don't think I was by my students. Because again, there's that relationship. I think that's...
You said it twice now that... I'm so sorry. I totally
No, you're done. I mean, you're good.
You said twice now that you were definitely the minority. You actually used those two words together when you were in New York.
Yeah.
Help me understand what made that important to you.
It was a unique experience, It was very unique. I had lived around white people all my life. White, middle, upper class, people who were exactly like me. And I was not in that environment for a long time. So it was, I don't know, it was eye-opening. People from all sorts. It was so many. My neighborhood was Italian, French, There were a lot of Muslims from all over. I was right across the street from the projects, largely African American. Different people all around me.
How do you see privilege participating in that?
Because I could go. I had the choice to go and move to New York. I could go do that.
And they could.
Yeah, many of them could not make the choice to go somewhere else. Yeah. Many of them were where they are all their lives and will stay there. Yeah. Seeing it through the eyes of privilege.
It seemed to change it for you.
Yeah. Oh, it's much more humbling to think of it in those terms. And somebody used this concept last night in a class, and I seem to it applies here. I think before, I don't know, I would put other people and myself on two different continuums, people who were different from me. Privilege really put us all in the same continuum. And I could be them so easily. And I think I have more responsibility to them that way. Because I have privilege, I have more power to be able to reach out. I have benefited greatly just because of the family I was born into. Yeah. The society I was born into, the color of my skin. That's, other people. That's humbling. I think it's that, whatever that is, and I don't know if humbling is exactly the right word, but that is that's an instigator. That's something that makes me move forward. I think that's part of that spark.